I'm Mar, and this is my opinion. Growing up in the 90s, one cartoon I watched regularly was Beetlejuice. It was wacky and surreal, but like Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles, I ate it up. It wasn't until I was approaching adolescence that I discovered the show was a spin-off of a movie. Released in 1988, Beetlejuice is a horror comedy directed by Tim Burton. A household name now, at the time Burton wasn't well known, as his only theatrical film was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Since that film was a success, it allowed Burton to pick his next project. He began work on a script for Batman with Sam Hamm, but Warner Brothers wasn't ready to greenlight that film. To kill time, Burton read through other scripts and was disheartened by the lack of originality many contained. That changed when he was handed a script by Michael Keaton, and cinematic history was made. The film revolves around the plight of Adam and Barbara Maitland, a recently deceased couple who find their spirits trapped inside their former home. While it wouldn't be a bad eternity, the pair soon learn a New York family of 3 has purchased the property and soon move in. There's Charles, the anxiety-ridden father, Delia, the abstract artistic mother, and Lydia, the gothic daughter. Despite taking a liking to Lydia, the Maitlands can't stand living with their parents and call on the spirit of Beetlejuice, a bioexorcist, to rid their house of the living. But things don't go as planned, and some deals are not worth making. While I've always enjoyed the film's humor, the sandworms, Deo dance, and juice running amok, for example, the afterlife's bureaucracy has grown on me as I've aged and mentally matured. I always found it funny, I just could never articulate properly why I found it funny. As an adult, I now can. It's funny because it's satirically mundane. Most religions and cultures present the afterlife as harmonious, where one's soul will be at peace for eternity. In Beetlejuice, dying is just another day at the office, with even more paperwork. It also doesn't hurt that there's elements of dark comedy involved. In the pre-production stage, Beetlejuice leaned more in the horror direction. Our title character was a winged, reptilian demon that took the form of a Middle Eastern man when he interacted with the other characters. His goal was to kill the Dietzes instead of scaring them away, and in one scene he attempted to rape Lydia, who then was only a minor, older sibling character. The Maitlands' death would also have been much more graphic, with their drowning depicted and Barbara breaking an arm in the crash. Warren Scarron was brought on to perform a rewrite, and he's responsible for the tone shift. While the concept might have worked, especially if a rewrite added in elements of dark humor, in retrospect I'm happy that they shelved the idea in favor of making Beetlejuice the wisecracking ghost with the most. The final draft of the script had a different interpretation of Adam's out-of-house experience. Instead of ending up on Saturn, Adam would encounter moving gears, barely escaping a physical encounter. From what I've gathered, it was filmed, but deleted after a test screening because audience members found it confusing. Alec Baldwin and Geena Davis played the Maitlands. The chemistry between them is subtle, but believable, and they are likable enough that the audience sympathizes with their plight. How would you like it if you died and some strangers bought the place you were haunting? Davis was the only cast member who initially committed to the film, as many of the others said no at least once. On a personal note, I didn't recognize Alec Baldwin in the film for years, as this was earlier in his career, and the glasses alter his appearance slightly. With my older eyes, he is easier to recognize. Another thing I never actively noticed when I was younger is that the Maitlands don't follow a dying rule. Every other spirit we see is in a condition that shows their manner of death. Burn victim, shark attack, voodoo curse, etc. This was a creative choice on Burton's end, as he didn't want his leads to be wet and uncomfortable throughout filming. Plus it adds to the waiting room reveal if the audience is unaware. Michael Keaton played Beetlejuice, and he was perfectly cast, owning every scene and having fun. Beetlejuice is such a scumbag, but with Keaton's performance you can't help but find him interesting and want to know more about him. I guess this is why he was made the lead in the cartoon, even if he is toned down. During their initial meeting, Tim Burton described Beetlejuice as a man who had lived in every time period, but no time period, which Keaton used as the basis for his performance. It also inspired him to incorporate physical oddities such as the trademark shark hairdo and large teeth. It worked to the point that Keaton was met with juice, juice chants when he first appeared on set, which excited the actor. It inspired him to improv, which is noticeable in all of his scenes. Keaton would collaborate with Burton again on his Batman duology. Winona Ryder played Lydia. While not as memorable as Keaton, she does an adequate job, believable and likable in her own way. The only issue I have with her character is that her reason for wanting to kill herself is shaky, and it has me wondering if there's more. She's drastically different than her parents, but that could be chalked up to teenage rebellion and generational differences. Before Ryder's casting was set, it came down to her and Alyssa Milano, and I'd be lying if part of me didn't wonder how she would have interpreted the part.
You're only saying that 'cause you like her. Woo!
Shut up! Lydia is the only other major character to cross over into the cartoon series, and her design seems to channel some of Winona Ryder's facial features. Ryder would go on to a great career, earning 2 Oscar nominations. Her work includes Bram Stoker's Dracula, Stranger Things, Girl Interrupted, and most famously, Edward Scissorhands, her second Burton collaboration. Jeffrey Jones and Catherine O'Hara played Delia and Charles Dietz. While nothing award-winning, both are memorable efforts, balancing each other well. The overbearing artist and the anxiety-ridden real estate exec. To me, O'Hara will always be the mother from Home Alone, but this is the second film that comes to mind when I see her face, followed closely by her voice work as Sally. The film was a personal win for O'Hara, as she met her future husband, production designer Bo Welch, on the set. Along with Charles, to me Jones will always be the Dark Overlord of the universe, even if his legacy is slightly tainted by recent personal choices.
Well, there it is.
Glenn Shadix played Otho, and his performance is very memorable, yet subtle. The audience can tell from the beginning that he's in over his head and doesn't know as much about things as he claims, which comes into play during the film's climax. Some of his dialogue in that scene is from Thomas Lovell Bedo's poem, The Warning. Outside this film, the only other roles I know Glenn from personally is a cameo in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where he put a curse on Will Smith, and the assistant in Demolition Man. Sadly, Glenn passed away in 2010, and the last song played at his memorial service was Deo, a fitting tribute. Vay Neal, Steve Laporte, and Robert Short did the excellent makeup effects, their work earning them an Academy Award. An interesting bit of trivia is that they beat out Rick Baker for the award, who was nominated that year for Coming to America. Danny Elfman composed the score. While a big name now, with over 100 films and shows to his credit, at the time he was still starting out, having composed scores for Midnight Run, Scrooged, and Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which was the beginning of his long-time collaboration with Tim Burton. Elfman's score was subtle, but chilling, with the main theme being the most memorable piece, so much so that it was also carried over to the cartoon. Although set in Connecticut, the film was shot in the small town of East Corinth, Vermont. The covered bridge was built specifically for the film, crossing a small creek the crew dammed to deepen the water. A facade of the house was built 100 yards uphill, but was used for exterior shots only. The skeleton head on top of the merry-go-round resembles Jack Skellington. While the film was still years away, Burton had been drawing the character since 1982, so his cameo could be considered cinematic foreshadowing, similar to the Go Monster Squad graffiti in Night of the Creeps. The infamous snake scene was filmed before Keaton was cast, so the animatronic bore no resemblance. After Keaton's casting, the studio suggested Burton film some additional shots, using a stop-motion puppet that better resembled the actor, mainly so the audience would know it was Beetlejuice and not some random monster from the afterlife. While I appreciate the effort, with Keaton's voice being used, how would there be confusion? How many other bioexorcists who attended Juilliard are out there? Lydia's wedding dress is bright red, a play on the old rhyme, married in red, better off dead. Given that the groom was already dead, it seems fitting. Not like the Juice would care about bad luck. The dress became Lydia's trademark look in the cartoon, after a slight redesign. Burton's direction was spot on with Beetlejuice. He took the surreal visuals he had used sparingly with his first film and turned the dial up to 11. While his later films might be hit or miss, one always knows it's a Tim Burton film because of his visuals. But here they're used the correct way, complementing the story instead of distracting from it. While I still have to watch Ed Wood in Big Eyes, currently Beetlejuice is my favorite film he's directed, and it gets better with each rewatch. Beetlejuice is a textbook example of horror comedy that leans closer to the latter. With likable characters, stunning visuals, and excellent satire, it makes for a fun viewing experience, one that will leave you scared shitless.